Hello, for this month's professional learning, instead of you going to content team, PL, and planning period meetings, we wanted to bring it to you for you to watch at your convenience. So today we are going to give you some classroom strategies for academic discourse that you can go ahead and put into play. What we know as teachers is that when we present the material in class, if we do that in a lecture format, or if we work multiple problems for math, or we do lots of chemical equations in science, that at the end of the day, we certainly know the material as teachers, but we want to give you some different ways that you can do informal formative assessments with academic discourse in your classrooms to check for student understanding. The first thing that we want to talk about is just the attention span of our students. Most recently, there's research out that suggests that adults can only pay attention for 8-minute increments. With students, of course, it's going to be a little bit shorter than that. So you want to think about when you're presenting information in a lecture type format, 8-minute increments is really all that your students can handle before you have some sort of break where we allow students the chance to digest the material. One of the things that we can do is called pause and think, also known as think, pair, share. In that instance, you would ask a question to students that you have just covered in your lecture, or you would ask them, what do you think are the next steps to solve this equation? What information from the problem do you think we have that we could work with? Anything like that, summary question or something like that. And the first thing you do once you ask the question is you give students a chance to think about the answer. So you would pause and give them a chance to think. I would encourage that students have an opportunity to write on a small post-it note, write a response on a scratch piece of paper so that they're then prepared to talk. What that post-it note allows students to do is to make a commitment to their answer and also to have something to say. Then we would turn to a partner. If I'm student A, I turn to student B. I'm going to present my answer to student B, and then we might let student B summarize the answer. Then for a second question, or even maybe the same question, we would ask student B to give us the answer, and then we would summarize so that we have a conversation that's taking place about the lecture. So this idea, again, pause and think. Our think, pair, share would be intermittently throughout the class to kind of break up the lecture or to break up the problem. If you're doing example problems, instead of doing maybe 8 problems in a row, you could do 2 problems and then have the students do a problem and share with each other.
You can extend the same strategy at the end of a video, a lecture, or even a text that students are reading in class by asking them to again partner up and spend 30 seconds talking about a summary of what they've just learned or read or listened to. And then the partner can continue with connections. So how does this information connect to what we've been learning in class or previous topics and ideas? And then finish up with an opportunity for each partner to ask questions that they still have about the topic. This is a great strategy when you're using a text, video, or lesson content that is easy to understand for the students. So it's just a simple summary strategy. But if you're presenting new and difficult content, if the text is difficult for students to grapple with, consider flipping the order of their participation so that at first they might spend 30 seconds to a minute asking each other questions. What questions did you have when you read the text? What questions do you still have at the end of the video or at the end of the lecture? And then they can also work with their partner on a minute each of observations they made and connections they made, and then finish with the summary. This is a great opportunity for you to walk around the classroom and do those formative checks. Listen for those main ideas and that summary that will tell you if the students have understood the content.
Another way that we can kind of check for understanding is called Wingman. And this is a group of 3, and we may have shared something with you last year on the choice board concerning Wingman, and if so, we will re-upload that to our It's Learning page. But it's a way, again, to do an informal formative assessment. One of the things we talk about constantly in education is I do, the teacher does, we practice together, and then you do, kind of a gradual release model. And this will be a way to just double check with the we do together. But in groups of 3, you would have 2 students, and you're going to have 3 students, and 1 student is the wingman. So 2 students would discuss the strategy, and the wingman, the third person, really is an observer of the conversation and a note taker of the conversation. It may be that 2 students are working a problem together in math or something, and they're still a third person taking notes. What would the third person record? He or she would record things such as, how many times does each student speak? How many times does each student participate in something meaningful for the task? Do they give important information? Demonstrate or determine who has the most compelling argument. But most importantly, what happens at the end, so we have the 2 people who are discussing, we have the third person who's really the observer and the note taker, but at the end, the wingman or the observer is the one who reports out to the class. So what occurred in that instance is that we had the 2 people having a conversation about the learning, but then the third person is not exempt from the conversation because he actually is responsible, or she is responsible, for sharing that with the group. So that is a different strategy that we have for you. It's called Wingman.
Our final strategy today is presented in a format like speed dating or perhaps wagon wheel. Some of you might be familiar with that speed dating terminology, where students are rotating in 2 groups, and what you do is you give them 2 different prompts to talk about. If you were using a text or listening for new content, you might ask one group of students to identify the most important idea or the most important point, argument, or claim. The second group of students might be asked to identify a key word, a key phrase, or a key sentence. In the math classroom, this might look like one group of students identifying the big idea. What are we trying to solve for? What might all the solutions look like? What are we trying to figure out in this problem? And then the second group of students could work on the details, the gotchas. Don't forget that multiplying 2 negatives makes a positive. Don't forget that when we're dividing fractions, you're actually multiplying by the reciprocal. Those kinds of details could be communicated by the second group of students. So what you do is consider dividing your class either into halves or maybe quarters, and then pose each question to the groups. So you would have, if you divided your class into 4 groups, you could have 2 of the groups working on the most important topic, the most important idea, and then you would have 2 of the groups working on those key phrases or details, or the gotchas maybe. After they've had enough time to prepare their answers, maybe a minute or 2, arrange the groups either in a line, like for speed dating, or in concentric circles, and have students share their answers with just 30 seconds or so, and then rotate to the next person. At the end of the session, when they've heard from everyone, the same ideas should be coming up over and over again. And so that reinforces the content with everybody in the classroom, and it allows you that time to go around and check to make sure that you're hearing all the right big ideas. And you're making note of some of the gotchas that the students have identified are hard for them to remember. This is a great strategy for them to recognize their own problem-solving techniques and skills. So today we hope we've given you some good ideas of something you can try in your own instruction. Remember what Ms. Oliver said at the beginning. If our students only have roughly an 8-minute attention span, we need to pause frequently to give them time to either summarize or interact with that content so that we know that they're understanding before we move on without their brains being ready to go. Make sure you take this time and let us know if you're trying one of these activities in class. We'd be happy to come watch and see how successful you are.
Thank you so much. We hope that you remember to at least try one of these strategies throughout the day, throughout the month, and you can try it, throughout the year as well. And also it can become a paperclip that you would document in TEKS when you try it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.